Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is episode 108, and this is our practice edition, where we go over lean improvements we made throughout the week and tie them back to lean principles. I'm Uriel Eisen of Austere Manufacturing.
And I'm Devin Bedoni of Lichen Precision.
You've got a quote.
What would an ocean be without a monster lurking in the dark? It would be like sleep without dreams. Werner Herzog.
Whoa.
This will be our psychedelic episode.
Yeah, welcome.
I'm going to talk about music.
So I guess this is a bigger stretch than last episode, but maybe the lurking in the dark, the monster lurking in the dark is waste. and sleep is the work we do, and the dreams are the dreams of improvements. That's what I got.
If you're wondering how to know when you become a vigilante.
Wait, vigilante?
For lean.
Not a vigilante.
Not
you
a vigilante.
Mean
sorry.
Like a zealot, but not. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What's that word? Yes. Someone who spreads the good word.
Like churches, yeah.
Yeah.
This is bothering me.
A waste vigilante. Take matters into our own hands on the production floor and eliminate waste.
It's when you start using quotes
That'd be
like
a good
this.
T-shirt. Waste vigilante. 8 lean wastes on the back. That'd be good. Anyway.
Yeah.
Some improvements.
We're not going to even try. Yeah. So last episode, I had discussed how we're putting more information on our work order slips.
Yeah.
So our work order slips have a visual control, a part name, customer name, QR code, some other information.
Okay.
And our job board is currently split into 4 sections, like needs to be ordered, has been ordered, material needs to be ordered.
Okay.
Material has been ordered, material has arrived, after which point it goes to programmed and ready to go to the shop floor.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, or up until very recently, basically you would come over to the material needs to be ordered section. You would see all these order slips, and then you'd have to pull up a computer to see how much material was needed for each part number,
mm-hmm.
and then compare to what we have on the rack.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was multiple things, you had to pull out a calculator or something and do some addition
Mm-hmm.
to figure out the total that you would need, say if 3 part numbers shared a stock size and stuff. That was a lot of A, carrying a computer or iPad around unnecessarily, and B, just general confusion and extra work.
Mm-hmm.
So we added a line on the work order slip that just lists the material quantity needed for each part number.
Very nice.
In feet.
And is that a theoretical number, or that takes into consideration like extra space? Like the stock you're going to actually cut and like a kerf, or is it just...
Yeah, it accounts for the stock allowance plus a kerf plus a plus a number that I plug in when I populate the jobs for, which is for how many spares I think we might want for setup spares.
Yeah.
And then Aiden updated the formula so that it assumes that if it's coming out of a certain size bar, it will figure out whether you can actually fit the last part in the bar.
Right, because you can't do a 5.6 out of one bar and then 0.4 out of the next.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
Let's see. This value does not take that into account. This value just gives you a total. But the values...
For placing the orders
take that into account. And so that's been really helpful. Again, just being like... taking all these extra steps of scanning.
That's awesome.
One thing, then the next thing, doing all this addition. It's just right there, easily viewable. Simple, stupid. What is it? KISS? Keep it simple, stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was numero uno.
Very cool. This doesn't super count as an improvement in my shop, but we implemented Arda at your shop. That was a lot of fun. We spent Kyle and I spent 2 days ish over there.
136-hour day.
Yeah, just making cards and setting up little bins and stuff, and aggregating stuff onto one rack, which I think we'll talk about next episode.
Mm-hmm.
And the merits and waste of centralized storage.
Yeah,
something I'm trying to figure out as well. But yeah, it was pretty fun.
And it seems like you guys got some good lessons.
A lot. Yeah. Every single implementation we've done, including in my shop, has been, really, really helpful in dialing in the product. It was, I think, at your shop that we realized that the images could be way larger because the QR codes used to take up a ton of space, and maybe they need to be slightly larger than they are in their current configuration. But now it's like mostly image, which is just makes finding stuff fast.
And it seemed like it was cool for me to watch and sort of reflect on kind of like what a general process needs to like sort of achieve for a customer, like just sort of like more like a general sort of sales conceptualization of what makes it easy for a customer? What do you want to provide? What do I want to provide for my customers? And what are things that I think are valuable that might actually end up being a downside in a process, in a sales process? Like you and I don't know if you want to like jump into the details here, but we were talking about like there's a lot of like potential customization, right? Which is on the surface.
Specifically potential customization of Arda for your shop.
Yeah.
Or any shop.
Yeah. Like a bespoke sort of implementation, which on the surface is a major upside. But in practice, I think my takeaway, and I think your guys' takeaway to some extent, was that this is actually like a major point of frustration potentially for a customer.
Yeah. I think the lesson for us has been essentially internally as well, which is very interesting, is that jumping the gun, like diving in deeper than the organization can kind of support or is ready for, is kind of just a huge waste of everyone's time. And so like when we got there, I was like really gung-ho on doing this very specific picking, like where the card tells you what shelf unit, what shelf in that unit, and then where on the shelf it was. And it very quickly became apparent that like your shop was not ready for that in those supplies. It is in your tool drawer, like very much so, but not on those supplies, which it isn't in my shop either. Like, so, right. No shade there. But in trying to do it, I just wasted the time of setting up that shelf, like labeling it, and then successfully building out the back end in Arda, but then going through supplies and being like, okay, where exactly do you want this? And it's sort of like, I have no idea.
Who cares?
Like, who cares? Right, exactly. Who cares? That doesn't matter. Like, that's not at all the problem we have.
Yeah.
Like, God willing, that is the problem we'll have, right?
Right.
Where it's like, okay, the retrieval is so dialed and our resupplies are so dialed that like that all makes sense.
Yeah.
That's not the problem we were there to solve.
Right.
We were there to solve like intermittently running out of stuff, and then also just like someone's mental space being dedicated to making sure we have like probe batteries or something.
Yeah.
Right. Like essentially that's what we were there to solve. So I think, and to your point about making a bespoke solution, and I've found this in my shop too, it's like we don't need to go through and sit and strategize about what storage locations we should build out on the back end of Arda to populate. And you sort of came up with this idea of just like coming in with a shelf.
Yeah.
And being like in Arda, just being like shelf. And then everything we put on that shelf as part of that implementation, we just say it's on the shelf, and then you can go change it. And over time, it might make sense to do that customization, but upfront, like gotta, and the reason I think it's funny is because we went into this very much with a mindset of like, we need to build a product that can grow with you. So like, if you just want to put the title and you don't know exactly where you're going to buy it yet, good. Like, you don't need to fill out every field.
Yeah.
And some software sort of requires that, but then it's easy to forget. Like we've been talking a lot about like the constant pull toward complexity, which is like so easy to fall for.
Yeah. Well, and there's that famous study, I don't know who did it, and so this is a terrible story, but about how choice famously makes people miserable.
Predictably irrational. Dan Ariely, I think, did a lot of the research. Could or be. some studies I read on it. And
so I think we are sort of like, I don't know what the root cause would be, but we're sort of taught to believe that choice will make us happy. And like we purchase a car, right? We're going to be like, I'm going to get this trim package and this stereo. And you don't think about the fact that actually that is like a minuscule amount of choice. And it, like if you were going to go to buy a car and someone was like, okay, what color do you want the hood? All right. What color do you want the left front quarter panel? All right. How about the roof? Okay. How about the seat of the driver's side under your butt?
And what about the thread color?
Yeah. And what about the part of the seat behind you? What about the back of the seat?
Right.
Like if that was what you were actually faced with.
That's a very good point.
It would be a miserable purchasing experience.
Right. They've kind of designed the level of options to theoretically get you a good medium.
Yeah. And I think that is a good principle to kind of like take away from just in general in moving, like in any sales sort of scenario of being like, I want you to have enough choice here to make sure that we match your needs generally within a set of standards, but not so much that it is overwhelming, paralyzing, and also sort of opens you up to make the wrong decisions. Yeah, majorly.
Of like clashing colors between your left and right quarter panels.
Yeah, or if they're like, okay, what engine do you want? What transmission do you want?
Oh, those don't work well together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that could be catastrophic, not just being like, oh, that's an ugly car.
This is a total tangent, but Alexander Slocum, who teaches precision machine design at MIT, has a lecture on sizing gearboxes for the motor, and it has to do with like inertia and matching inertia. I thought that was very cool.
Huh.
Yeah. You kind of realize like, you could put any transmission on any motor
theoretically,
but you don't. There's bounds in which it works well, and then ones which it doesn't. And I don't remember the specifics. So moving right along.
I mean, and just not to beat this to death, but my experience and I mentioned this, and when we were kind of not decompressing, but like discussing it afterwards, was that like even myself, I think, has put a lot of thought into storage and retrieval and this kind of stuff. Not that I'm an expert, but I've at least been thinking about it.
I've been retrieving things for years.
Yeah. We kind of got into the weeds a little bit on like, where do you want this thing? And like, what's the subdivision of this storage area? And like, how many different categories do you want? And I was kind of like, I don't have any idea. Like, I don't.
And this is making me upset.
Right. Like, like I feel like I should be well equipped to make those decisions. And in the moment I was not, because a lot of it was it didn't matter. It was just sort of happenstance in that case.
If you look at like a Formula One car, at the steering wheel, they have like a lot of buttons, right? And a lot of options and a lot of things they can do to the car. There's a reason they don't stick like a 5-year-old who maybe is on, head in that direction in a Formula One car.
Right.
Like, it wouldn't be good for the car. It wouldn't be good for the kid. And actually the results would be worse than them being in like a little go-kart with like 30 cc's or whatever they have them in. And I sort of feel like it's that. Yeah. Like we talked last episode a little bit about like earning not the right, but like earning the whatever to have low inventory.
Yeah.
Rather than just like slashing your inventories and calling yourself lean. Like, it sort of feels the same.
Yeah.
And like you'll run with kanban for a while, and then you realize the level of control it kind of gives you, and the level of reliability, and then you're like, wait a second, what if we did this fancy thing? And you're like, okay, yeah, now we're ready for that. Like, now we know that the top shelf, or like this new shelving unit, is actually fully categorized for all those really weird things that we don't, like your tool library, like not grouping by subcategory, right? Like not putting all batteries together, but it's like, you want a AA battery, what does the breadcrumb say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's something we will work toward.
Yeah.
And not a good starting point.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I had a good time.
Same. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, this was a minor thing, but kind of cool. So we've had an ongoing issue in scheduling for jobs that will run across multiple machines.
Okay.
And how that plays out in our physical job board. Sort of, it's a dependencies issue, basically.
Okay.
So right now, the way everything flows across our boards, it kind of assumes once it arrives on the shop floor that it just continues through the shop floor.
I see.
But the reality is that some things go to the shop floor, then they come back to programming, then back to the shop floor if they were to go across multiple machines.
Interesting. Okay.
Or, I mean, you could potentially program everything prior, but either way it needs to, say, take a spot in the queue for the lathe, and then it also needs to take a spot in the queue for the mill.
Yeah, and
whether or not everything,
lathe can't go first, or the mill can't go first.
Yeah,
whatever the flow is.
Yeah, and maybe more importantly is like in the other sequence of jobs that are going to come after that on the mill, you need to know that there's something in front of it. This sounds very simple, and it is basically. So I just took a piece of paper and wrote reserved for second ops, and just clipped it as like a placeholder that you can stick in any of the queues.
Oh, because the job tag is a single tag.
Yeah.
And now it sort of needs to, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so the job tag, let's say, get into the weeds here. Job tag for the lathe gets programmed, material gets cut, it goes to the lathe with the material, it's running with those jobs. There's this reserved spot for it in the queue for the mill, so that you know that everything else that's coming along in the mill can slot in behind it effectively, and that's not just an empty space. And then once they're done there, they can flow through. Or if it's flowing on both machines, it represents that.
Interesting. That makes sense. That, yeah, simple, effective.
Not 100% solution, but effective.
Would it make sense to treat them as two jobs? Or would that just be annoying? I mean, they're not truly two jobs, because you can't do op 2 before op 1.
Yeah. I have thought about this a bit, but I haven't like properly sat down and like gamed it out completely.
Yeah.
But so far I've avoided that.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Yes. I mentioned this last episode, but redesigned or did I mention it earlier? Redesigned the card layout for make a much larger image.
Yeah, you did mention. Yep.
Yep. So that was a very nice one. I'm now reprinting a lot of the cards in our shop because, I don't know, I like the bigger images.
Yeah.
Our brains are, according to the internet, there are studies. Okay, here's the stat. We are extracting information from images. Our brains are 60,000 times faster.
60,000
than reading,
than
words. Yeah.
Wow.
Now, it does raise the question of like, what information were they testing? Is it like how much can you reduce? Like if you flash a thing on a screen. I don't know what the experiment was, right? So like,
sure.
Either way, it's pretty significant, and so,
I mean, it might just be like you can reduce an image or text sort of to like, megabyte type of information, and so it might just be that. Sort of like,
what do you mean?
Well, like there's a certain amount of embedded information in an image that's just like in terms of like bits, right? And same with text.
Okay. I guess.
Sort of. I guess. So like if you
that's an interesting thought.
Comprehension, I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
It is hard to say how they would test that.
But you can imagine,
like, the point stands that it's quite quick.
It's quite quick, relatively. And also, absolutely, our visual cortex, as we've mentioned before, is admirable. Anyway, that was it.
Yeah. We successfully anodized a part.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So kind of tasked my employee Aiden about a month ago, or maybe more. We started talking about it. And
like 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. And then kind of got down to brass tacks about a month ago-ish.
Yeah.
And finally got all the pieces together a couple weeks ago and had some successful parts. So I suspect that is just the beginning of a very long path.
Yes.
But it was a good way to start.
That's a great beginning.
Yeah. So it was very cool to see a part that we'd made come out and be pretty much defect free and, look correct.
I feel like lean manufacturing is a great, like that anodizing is a great application for lean. Because it's so process driven and very low variability in the recipe, right? It's do this amount of time at this, with this amperage, with this surface area kind of materials and whatever, but it's very recipe driven.
Yeah.
You're not like looking in the tank and doing it sort of by taste or something.
How many sides do I access this from?
Swish it this way. I'm sure that exists. Actually, now that I'm saying it, I'm sure there's a lot of feel.
Yeah. Actually, there was some really interesting thing right off the bat where we like racked it one way.
Bubbles.
Racked it one way, had like drain issues.
Oh.
Then we like racked it a different way to like mitigate draining issues, but then we had bubbles get captured inside the holes, which kept things from getting anodized. I was like, oh, this is trickier than
more than meets the eye.
Yeah. So, but that was really cool. On that note, if anybody listening has experience on the QC side, I would love to talk to you. Especially like in production sort of settings.
For anodizing?
Yeah, in terms of like
thickness?
Testing surface thickness, because I suspect it's not like done with a micrometer.
Right.
Because there's, and at the thicknesses that are being added, there's a lot of, there'd be a lot of noise in the system for most people. So I suspect that it has more to do with the recipe side.
Could you do a hardness test?
Maybe. I think it'd be more like a scratch test, a scratch hardness test versus like a classic Brunel test.
Well, there's the Brunel test with the like a punch.
Yeah.
Sort of. Isn't there also one with a marble drop and bounce?
Yeah, but I think both of those, we give a false reading with sort of the like substrate versus the surface.
You need to know the substrate for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm imagining if it's a hard... Well, I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I think your point
stands. This is why I want to talk to people.
Yeah. Instead of me speculating, I'll talk about improvements we've made. That's cool. That's very cool. Congrats.
You. Yeah.
We redesigned the assembly station. So we sort of talked about this last episode a bit, but one of the motivations, I was standing in the shop just imagining the flow of like materials and people and just realizing that the way, if you think about walking through my shop, it's very serpentine.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of turning.
Trying to maximize that
totally organically, but also like there were a series of good decisions being made.
Sure.
That resulted in a bad decision.
You're just doing it with permaculture basics in mind.
Something like that. But basically, if we just take our whole assembly area as it currently is oriented in the shop and slide it across the shop, suddenly the pathway from the door and the bottom of the stairs will just be a straight shot down the shop. It also means that we suddenly have access to the back of the shelves for where we keep our painted parts.
For assembly.
Which means we can load new parts from the paint department in the back of the shelf and pull from the front, which is a beautiful thing and really opens up our ability to shrink our batch sizes drastically without making it a huge pain in the ass of like unloading a ton of little containers with like 8 little parts in them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really exciting. And I don't know, I was pretty pleased with the process of that redesign, in that we kept testing little parts of the idea, like how to make the trays. We tried, we just made some, we put them on the station, we moved parts over so we could actually play with it. And yeah, I feel like we're getting better at understanding inertia and like valuing. It's very easy to sort of race to a conclusion that you've imagined because you imagine it being a good idea. Mm-hmm. And then you get there and you're like, oh, there's a lot of new unforeseen problems.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, trying to become a little bit more aware of that to give ourselves a bigger time budget of sort of wasted time earlier on, of a non-streamlined, quote unquote, process.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Sounds good. That's still in the works, but very excited about it.
Nice. Got 2 here that are really one. So we got our machines back on a network.
Very cool.
Our CNC machines, or at least the ones that are networkable. When we moved to the new shop, I don't know a lot about networks, which is why this happened. So like at the old shop, we just kind of like plugged all our stuff into the router and it worked. We moved to the new shop, and the router we had, this might have just been a misunderstanding on my part.
Okay.
But I thought we needed to assign static IPs to each machine.
Okay.
And the new internet service provider we use wanted us to pay a large amount of money per static IP per month. And weird. I was kind of like, screw that.
Right.
Turns out that probably we didn't need static IPs and we could have just plugged it in and been fine. Mm-hmm. But there was also like, it would have been running like several hundred feet of Cat5 or Cat6 cable or whatever. Anyway, long story short, we didn't network the machines, and we just plugged each machine directly into the workstation computer that it sits next to load programs.
Okay.
But what that meant is that then we didn't have the option to pull like production monitoring data out of it through Chatter, which we have a subscription to. Mm-hmm. So for the past 6 months, we haven't had access to that service. But we finally got the machines back on a network. So we set up a second router, basically that's a sub network in the shop that the machines are hooked up to. Okay. That's firewalled from the internet, or firewalled from the outside world. Mm-hmm. And we have Chatter machine monitoring back up and running. So that's going to be, I think, pretty good for now that we have a more, it's not complete, never complete, but a more dialed in like setup cart, setup process. It's going to give us better predictive sort of feedback for when those setups need to be actually prepared.
Very cool.
Yeah. So pretty excited about that.
It is so crazy to me how much systemization is possible. And then every time you systemize a new aspect of the business, you're like, how did we go this long without systemizing this?
Yeah.
But then it opens up a huge new array of inefficiencies that you just weren't aware of. Mm-hmm. It's pretty fun. So we started with Arda trying to successfully building out, but still a lot of work to do. A lot of the tools we built for dealing with external kanban, a shopping cart, reorder automation stuff, sorting by vendor, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Just realizing that a lot of those tools could be useful for internal kanban. So we started building out a production dashboard, which we will be testing soon at Austere, which will make I think it's going to cause a lot of new problems, and I think it's going to solve a lot of problems. Yeah. And the question is ratio. For some companies, I think it's a slam dunk. Like there's a lot of companies that sort of do something like this.
Yeah.
whether that's like just having it be cloud-based where they can sort of shuffle things from afar or from a different building or whatever, right? And sort of monitor the flow of work through the plant virtually.
Yeah.
The other thing it lets us do is a lot of cool sorting and prioritization. And this is a whole can of worms that I am not really educated enough on, but you sort of mentioned some of Toyota's methodology for queuing and executing kanban of different classifications.
Like a long time ago.
Yeah. And so I don't know much about that, but I totally, probably not totally, but I see why one might want to do that. And it is difficult, not impossible and not without downsides, but difficult to do it just purely with analog cards.
Yeah.
So like it's a lot of paper slips we start moving around. If like for us, reducing to batch sizes of 8 is already like our board is already very full of cards, and there would be a lot of potentially shuffling.
Yeah.
The thing that gives me pause is kind of like, are we straying from best practice and sort of using the computer as a crutch?
Yeah.
Or is it, I mean, you went through the whole job board exploration, and it seems like moved some of it back to digital, like building out that ERP but like that, but having both of those is a sort of an essential piece. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out. Just as a point of reference, we already deal with digital kanban, and that's the ones that our customers issue to us from the website onto our production floor. So it's not like a totally new concept. But I do think it's going to take some getting used to, and then some nice feedback back into how the tool is built.
It does seem like, with, as discussed on last episode, with some increased buffers at a few key points, that could be a very powerful tool that could like really standardize your workflow.
Yeah, and it's very exciting for a number of reasons I won't get into until we prove some of them out, but for also some I will mention here, which is that we can do things like so there's a very big difference between like a customer order in terms of volume and like a wholesale order. And the question is, do you size your buffers for wholesale, or do you size them for customer? And then for wholesale, do you size them for a wholesale account that orders 100 at a time, or like 1,000 at a time? And this is where the temptation of a true ERP are very real, even though I think the costs are kind of hidden, which is like, if someone places an order on our website for 1,000, we kind of know what that means. And so I think with this digital hybrid might let us do things like, okay, we have an order for 1,000 that we're going to deliver 500 a month, let's say, or 400 a month. It can release Kanban at a scale that makes sense for our production, so it doesn't break it. So it could issue those in eight, batches of 8, in a cadence that we sort of dictate. So it's not just a huge dump, and then someone is manually handling how many get introduced at any stage. We've also connected it to our Shopify, and so we could automatically check, any SKU, any one item that is over, say, 50 pieces. We could break it out into these sub Kanban that get released to our paint department and kind of handle that. I don't know. I think it's going to be very exciting to play with. I think we're definitely going to burn ourselves here and there, but I think it'll be very cool. I do still have the question. Like Toyota says, I forget the quote exactly, but there's a lot of quotes around like not trusting computers. Not exactly. It's not trusting them, but like,
be wary of the pitfalls.
You can really get ahead of yourself pretty easily with a computer. And so trying to bear that in mind while also, I don't know, like not using AI at this juncture, I think is short-sighted. Just generally, like, I'm not saying run your business exclusively using AI, but like it's a pretty powerful tool, and it's worth understanding how it fits in. So anyway, 2 thoughts on the don't use computers thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway.
Use them measured.
Use them, and I guess like everything, pay very good attention to the results and rationalize your production and
right.
and engage in continuous improvement activities.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Like that.
This is kind of a funny one, but in our continuous improvement podcast Google Sheets, as we go through things, we highlight them different colors depending on whether we've talked about them and etc. And I have continuously been frustrated by trying to find the correct color.
There's like 17 shades of green.
Yeah.
And the other annoying part about it is when you select one, because you have that cell selected, it doesn't actually show up as the final color. So sometimes you have to click out to see that you got it wrong. And then click back. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, we are starting this and I was like, this is so annoying. Why can't you set what is the standard? And then I looked and there was like a little edit pencil symbol and I was like, aha, I think you can. So small improvement is we made standard colors in our Google Sheet. So that was cool.
Very cool.
I'm going to go highlight this green.
We were sort of kicking around the idea of maybe doing a YouTube version of this. Write in if that is of interest. I don't really listen to podcasts on YouTube, but I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's anyone who listens to our podcast. I suspect a lot of them might be on the Gemba, as it were. Anyway, write in.
Yeah. I have one other note. We have a machine for sale. We're looking to make some upgrades and purchases in our shop. Want to free up some space and capital. So if you are interested in a 2018 Brother Speedio with the 4th axis and most of the options you'd want, I think 3,700 hours on the spindle, reach out to me. We are looking to sell.
Maybe I'll buy it.
I mean, wasn't going to say it, but.
All right. Well, you can find the podcast at Incremental CI on Instagram. You can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram or austeremfg. And then the Arda side of things is arda.cards on Instagram and on the internet. It is a top-level domain, so that's just www.arda.cards. Someone was like, .com? No. It's just arda.cards.
You can find me at lichen_mfg on Instagram, likenprecision.com on the internet. We have a Patreon. Go
Patronize
have a look.
us.
Patronize. And we will talk to you shortly.